Welcome back to my channel Conquer the Fear. In this video we are going to discuss about the most important Java 21 features, which is an preview changes, the unnamed classes and the main method changes which were introduced as part of this particular release. Now you must be already knowing when you're trying to write a Java class, what all things have to write as a boilerplate code in order to write just one simple hello world program. Now if you have written hello world program, you must be knowing that you had to write all the mandatory, all the ceremonial code which was required to execute one simple statement. Now with this particular feature being introduced, now you no need to write that particular boilerplate code. You can just simply skip that particular public static void main code, and you can write the simple small program very precisely. Also, if you are a beginner, this was kind of an overwhelming, because in order to just statement you had to write lot of changes in that particular file. Now let's jump into the code where exactly, let's look out the previous way how you used to write that particular code when you wanted to print the hello world program. Now earlier what we used to write a simple sample hello world program. Now under this, if you see, there was used to be a class structure, the package, the class name, and etc. And if there were some extend or interface related thing, you used to write that particular implement or extend classes. Now on top of that, in order to print that particular one simple hello world statement, you need to have this particular public static void main, and then there used to be a arguments written over here. Now, and after writing all this, after this you are supposed to write this particular print statement with this particular hello world program. Then you used to write this and run this particular program. Now in order to just simply print this, you see the amount of code we have written. We have written the package, we have written the class structure, we have written this particular public static void main and the arguments, and then ultimately we have printed this. So in order to just print this, it was too much overwhelming for the beginner to understand what exactly this particular fields are, what are these particular keywords are, and he used to get confused. So this was a quite a bit a boilerplate code also, where we need to write this every time. Now let us discuss about what changes has been introduced as part of Java 21. Now if you look at this particular Java 21, you will be able to see like Java 21 features. Now if you take a look at this, you will be able to see. See here. Now you see here, this is one of the changes which has been introduced as part of this particular 21 feature. Now if you take a look at this, you will see that this has got introduced as part of this 21, the unnamed classes and the instance method changes. So this is one of the quite important and the powerful change. We'll look into the exact code changes, what exactly precisely this means about, but this is one of the features which has been introduced as part of this. Now, one thing to note, this is going to be a preview version. So what the preview feature version means, that this might change in the future version. So as of now, if you see at this particular video recording time, we are on 2025, where the version is 24, the latest stable version, and it is still in the preview feature. Okay, so it has not been standardized. So even if you want this particular things to be used up in the production, that is not suggestible. So please make it, use it for your own purpose until it is again standardized. I hope this will be standardized in the next release of Java 26 in the January, around that part. So it might be standardized. So until that, you just use this particular feature and know what exactly it is, because in future you can use it in your own production. Now we'll discuss about what exactly this particular changes has come up. Now if you see, now the first thing actually what it has been, but it is an implicitly declared classes. What does that mean? That we are going to create a class. Every time you need to write that particular explicit class declaration, So for just simple program, you had to write this particular hello world program with the class name, with the static void main details and everything. So this all public static void everything you have to write at the beginning, and this is quite overwhelming for the newcomers. Now with this particular feature enabled, you can omit this particular explicit class declaration. Now for this simple single line program, the Java compiler is going to encounter that particular source file, which is going to have that particular method or a field that is not enclosed in a this particular class. Now this is going to be implicitly consider the part as an unnamed top level classes. Now we'll discuss what all things we need to do right with respect to this particular unnamed class. So here you doesn't need to explicitly define this particular main class over here, and then you doesn't need to have this particular package defined. So always the if there is always a member of an unnamed package, right, let's say, then you cannot use this particular package over here. So you have to remove this, the first statement, whichever it is there in the unnamed class. Then ultimately, if you see, if you are if you are not having this particular statement of class, then it is not, it is implicitly going to be the final, and it is only going to be extending only with the Java object only. Now if now it is going to be as similar like in a file where, a class where you will be writing a final and a class where you are not extending any other class which you have customly created. So in that case, like how object is then superclass for it, in similar way, this is going to be unnamed class would be final implicitly, and it will only extend the object class. So you cannot implement neither interfaces, not extend any classes. So that's the one of the things which you have to take care when you're dealing with the unnamed classes. Then you cannot have the named references. So you will not be able to define that particular named classes by its name. So you cannot create the instances like this, like how you used to create the like this, right? So you will not be able to create it with this particular things. We'll look into the exact code, but this is what the exact terms which you will able to see it when it comes to this. So must note this particular points, and also you must have this particular main method, which is going to be the unnamed method. So in this is going to be the JVM will search for this particular method. Now for this particular method, as I'm saying, now you can also have the default zero parameter constructor, but that is going to be implicitly defined by the default constructor. So you cannot define an explicit constructor over there. So that's one thing which you have to check it. Now in order to make this particular changes, let's see how all things will turn around once you remove this. So the very first thing what we have discussed, there is should be no explicit declaration. So I will just comment this out for you. Now you see, you will not be able to define this. Now you see, this is what exactly it is saying. You cannot do this, right? So that's what exactly when you're dealing with this. Now on top of this, if you see, there is a public static void main method defined. So there is no nothing you can I mean exactly, if it is, if you see, there is has to be removed the package also. Now you see, this is giving, now it is not giving a compile time error. Now you see, if I try to run this particular program, it will be able to run this even though if I don't have the package. Even though I am commented this particular code, it is still running. Now you will see that it's quite easy, and it is quick to start. We have removed the boilerplate code. So in order to just simply run particular program, you can just write this particular code. Now you can also define the methods and the fields which are going to be implicitly the part of that particular unnamed class. Now let's say you have defined one. Let's say in this particular method, I'm going to define, let's say, void. Let's say I'm going to say display message. Now if you see in this particular method, I will be able to write this system out.println over here. So this is one of the simple another method which we have written, display. Now you see here, this kind of messages you can print it. Now in this, actually in this main method, you can define those particular methods and call this particular method from this. Now you see here, you can simply call this particular method directly from there. Now you see this is going to be called up from there. Now why it is giving me a static? Because I'm trying to call this particular thing from the static method. So here if you see, now with respect to the new changes of that particular thing whatever we discussed, the main method changes are also going to be changed up. Now here you see, here I've removed the static over here, where it is not required to write the mandatory thing. Earlier it was quite mandatory to write that. Now JVM will check that, even if it is, it will only check for the main method, and then you can write that particular program over here. Now if you see, if I run this particular program, definitely it will go run this particular program and this. Now if you see, I can also define the implicit variables over here. Now let's say I want to define some year is equal to 2025 over here. Now you can simply define this. Now this is going to be the implicit field of the unnamed class. So this is an implicit field. So this is where exactly you will be able to see that, and you will be able to print that. So this is what you can do in your class, the field, and then year. Now you see, if I try to run this, you will be able to see that it is printing that particular value as well, right? So this is how you can actually define this. Now this particular program what we have written over here has to be run manually as a preview feature. We'll come to that how you can run this particular program. uh, Earlier, I mean, in this particular IDE, as I have actually marked it, I have converted my program to point it to the Java 24. Hence, this particular feature is allowing me to run in the IDE. Or else, if you are having installed it in your local machine, you have to explicitly write the Java compiler code, and then the release part, enable the preview, and then write the program how you used to normally compile that particular program. I will tell you that particular exact code. Now, in order to compile and run this particular program, as this is a preview feature and it is not in the standard version, you have to explicitly enable that using the command. So when the commands are simple and as usual, but only there were some attributes or the parameters which has been introduced. So in order to run this particular program, what we have introduced, so we will have to write Java the way we used to write earlier for compilation part. Now in this you have to give it the release. Let's say this particular release number is 21, and then I have to give you the enable preview and then the program name. So here in this case, once you do this, you will be able to run this particular, compile this particular program. It might give you some warning, but this is how you run it. Now if you see at the start, the Java C and the file and rest everything over here, to in order to run this, first you have to enable that as in that particular preview version, then only it will be able to run this. So once you compile this, you'll get a warning message, but there will be no error message. Post that, the way normally how you write the Java program, run a program, then in order to run also you need to enable that particular preview program over here, and then you have to run this. So this is how you run that particular program when you have that particular features, that is preview. So in order to run that particular program, it is not standardized, so this has to be explicitly enabled for that particular released version over here. Now, as I was running in the IDE, so this is one of the benefit when it comes to the integrated IDE, where it gives you the whole platform to set up without you need to worry about how you to run that particular program. Internally, everything the IntelliJ will take care of running it and compiling it, and giving it to you the file, right? So yes, you have to focus on the business logic over here. That's what the wonderful thing about the IDE. Now we'll start looking into what exactly the method changes has been introduced as part of this particular features. Now this is again called as an instance method. It is explicitly called as the main method changes. What we are discussing is called the main instance changes. Now along with that particular name changes, unnamed classes which we have seen, we have some flexible changes with respect to the main method, how it has been declared. So traditionally, what we used to write public static void main and other things. So in that case, we used to write that particular thing, and then we used to call that particular method. Along with that, you used to have this particular class written over here. Now this is what, with the launch of this, there has been little bit ease. So there has been new signatures of method which the JVM will now search. We'll discuss one by one what exactly are the allowed methods. Now first of all, I'm just writing it for this particular for you purpose, information purpose. Now this is one way where this will be trying to look into what kind of method it is, right? So this is one way where actually it will try to look the method signature. So this is one of the traditional way which we discussed. Now the other way what exactly it's try to look into is, it will, you can remove this public as well. So in this way you can also, without declaring the public also, JVM, if you have written this particular statement, it will still find that and it will still run it. I can show you that. So it is going to perform exactly the same thing, same behavior. Now if you see, it is going to still run that particular year. Okay. Now the along with this particular changes, now you can even remove this particular static. So this was also one of the boilerplate thing which JVM used to look for that particular static, because it has to run that particular program without creating the instance of this. Now I will just try to showcase you this as well, to run and see whether this particular program is still running or not. Now you see it is still running. So this is how you have to write that. So in this case, we have removed the public, we have removed the static, and then one more thing what has the changes is that you can even remove this particular arguments also from this particular main instance method. Now still this particular signature, if it is present, the JVM will still find this particular method and it will print it. Now look at this. The earlier from this particular thing, I have been, made the changes till this. Now look at this, how simple it is looking, how, cleaner it is looking, and for just simple printing that particular statement, you doesn't need to write that particular different methods or keywords. Now static is optional over here, public is also optional over here, and also the string argument is optional over here. So it doesn't need to have that particular mandatory things to write that to invoke this particular main method. So you cannot. There is one situation in this where you cannot, uh, I mean, you can no longer if you're not defining the public, so it can have protected, it can have default, or it can have public. So it cannot have a private. So you cannot write a private over here. Okay. So I mean, that's where it will not be able to recognize it actually when you try to run this particular. Now if you see, you are getting a method to run it. So this is where the JVM is not trying to recognize it, is not getting it. So if you, the moment you make it as public private, it will not be able to remove it. Now if you remove this, this is going to be the default thing. Now even though, let's say if you have made it as protected, now you will see that you're still, that particular method has come and you will be able to run this. So except private, except private, you can use other things as a part of this particular thing to access specifier for this. But when it comes to the string argument, these are not no longer an mandatory things with the main method. So this has become quite flexible when it comes to this. So this is where actually the quite changes has happened. Now we already looked into it where we have defined one method over here, and then we are trying to call this particular display method from this, and we are still able to call this in spite of you not writing the public static void main over here. So this is what the changes has been. Now you remember, right? So how to run this particular program, you have to Java compiler and then the release version and then enable that particular preview, and then exactly the class name or the whatever the file name, whatever you define. So in that case it will compile it and then run it. So in that case you can do that. Now these are the quite important, you have to remember this particular features. So they are not final, but they might change in the future. So make sure you constantly check this. Now, as of now, as I mentioned, in 2025, where this particular release Java 24 is there, it is still in the preview phase. It has not been standardized. So I think the next release is going to be standardizing it, and then actually you can use it in the production. So you have to explicitly, if you want these particular features to be enabled and compiled it, you have to explicitly enable them, compile them, and run them. So you don't forget to write that double hyphen enable preview. So in that case, you will be able to run that. So if you are not writing that, you will get some compilation or a runtime error. So that's what the important thing. I hope I was able to explain you clearly what are these particular changes, how you can implement in your program, and what exactly the preview features which will be used up in your program, so that you can simply print that particular statement without writing the boilerplate code. So if this video has given you some value, please subscribe for more such videos. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Thank you for watching.